Out there. All right, you guys, welcome to the 2025 RCEP Day 3. We started off your RCEP experience with Robbie Smith talking about the importance of the RCEP, the Referee Coaches Education Program, and the influence on him as a coach and his athletes. Worked with Nolan Metters on basics of freestyle fundamentals compared to folk style fundamentals, and of course Greco as well. Then we kind of talked through some of those basic scoring actions just to build upon. Yesterday, I delved into some risk, some correct throw, and then did a little bit more deeper dive into the quad pod Merkle situations there. And then Grant Williams ran us through the attack, counter attack, along with some other things there. We'll have all these interactions, all these presentations recorded. It will take some time. Tom's going to work with us, Tom Quisley, to get those recorded and uploaded to the USWA website. And then we'll actually share that link with you guys on the Facebook page as well. So all of the work will be available for you to reference at a later date, hopefully to get that out to you by the end of next week so that you're ready to kick off your freestyle Greco season on the right foot. For today, I've got a couple of international 1S officials and then a category UWW1 official working with you through the philosophy of passivity, fouls, total concepts of the bouts, and then our challenge procedures, which I know our coaches love to kind of dig their feet in on that and make sure that everybody's on the same page with what are we looking for as officials and what is our policies and procedures whenever it comes to that. The more you know, the more power that you have from the coaching side there. So we'll have Nick Kindred and Jason Bobby working with us first, and then Josh, the Doc Guru, will be working with us on the second part of this. This will be our longer one because once we get into the philosophies of it all, it does take time to dig through those. So I'll be opening up you guys' ability to speak, chime in when you want, jump into the chat, add your comments there. The Q&As are available as well. Jason and I will be monitoring those as we go, and we'll interrupt if we feel like we need to. If not, we'll answer all those questions on the back end as we work our way through the presentations. All right, first up, we've got Nick Kindred and Jason Bobby. Nick, are you ready?
Yes, sir. All right, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And of course, I didn't start on the right slides. Give me a second. All right. So as Rick mentioned, this is Module 4, time management, total bout, passivity, and negative wrestling. That's what we're going to cover in this module. Jason, Bobby, and I will be doing this together, so we'll be kind of tag teaming. And I'll just say, I'm always flattered when I'm asked to do this particular set or this particular module because this stuff's hard. It's not black and white. It's not the easy part of officiating. So I feel good when somebody asks me to do it because that means people have confidence in me kind of explaining through this stuff. Because again, it's not just a straightforward thing. You really kind of have to understand a lot of different pieces. So with that, we'll dive right in. So time management, in addition to all the different things going on in a match, the referee, the match chairman, the judge, the athletes, the coaches, the clock is a piece of that. And in fact, it's one of the most important pieces, particularly when you're talking about passivity and the idea of total bout, not just, hey, points were scored or points weren't scored, but when were they scored? How were they scored? Like those are all important components that play a role. And again, so you've got to have an internal clock, but also position yourself in a way that you always have your eyes on the clock. I know when I referee folk style or I watch people referee folk style, this idea of a towel tapper makes no sense to me because as a referee, I have again, my internal clock and really I have the clock in my vantage point at all times also. So I would never need a towel tapper because I'm keeping an eye and paying attention to the clock at all times. So and then again, I kind of mentioned total bout concept. So again, when are points scored? How are they scored? Are important components to consider. This is the philosophical part of the international styles of wrestling that differ than, again, folk style. And I will refer to folk style a lot because in the United States, that's what a lot of us grew up with. So that's like our original point of reference. And And in a lot of ways, it helps us understand wrestling, but in other ways, it locks our mind into things that are not, or that make the international styles not intuitive to us, right? They're kind of counterintuitive. So I will kind of use some folk style references as a way to give examples and differences between that and the international styles. So, all right. Next slide. Okay, determining passivity or negative wrestling. So you can ask yourself some questions when you're determining passivity. Does an action prevent somebody from getting a lock or hooking? If the answer is yes, then you're most likely looking at negative wrestling, right? So are they blocking things off? Are they twisting fingers? Are they keeping an attacking wrestler from getting a hold of something? If so, then you're probably looking at negative wrestling. If not, then you go to the next question. Does the action prevent the start of an attack, right? So again, negative wrestling, I can't even get a hold of the guy. Passivity is more, I can get a hold of the guy, but then they're preventing me from creating any kind of attack. Then you're looking at passivity. If the answer to that question is no, then you just keep on wrestling, because eventually you'll get points. And we'll get into some videos later that kind of support these ideas and give you some visual examples, okay? But I do love this last line, right? There's a paradigm shift. When you're trying to identify passivity, you're not actually trying to identify passivity. You need to identify who the active wrestler is. If you can identify who the active wrestler is, then that allows you to identify who the passive wrestler is, because it's the person you haven't identified as the active wrestler. Okay? All right. And then just a little side-by-side view here of passivity versus negative wrestling. So passivity, evading contact and staying in the zone, interlocking fingers, grabbing wrists and just holding them, continuously breaking contact. That's a big one in Greco that less experienced officials have a hard time identifying. You might see somebody making contact, but then they immediately break away. So continuously breaking contact, that's passivity. Again, that kind of falls in line with faked attacks, right? Not real legitimate attacks. General defensive wrestling, and then moving backwards for defense. It's important that piece says moving backwards for defense, because certainly there are attacks that come from moving backwards. And if you've ever had to referee Jordan Burroughs, you know he's really hard to referee because he moved backwards a lot, but he also scores a lot of points. So that part there is key, moving backwards for the purpose of defense. And then conversely, negative wrestling, blocking with your head, blocking with two hands. That could be two hands holding onto a wrist. That could be two hands in the elbows or in the chest. Certainly two hands to the face. We'll get into that. That's actually a direct caution. And then refusing contact, and then fleeing the hold, which fleeing the hold is kind of a broad statement. But again, we'll get into what does that mean and what does that look like a little bit later in the presentation. All right. Here are some examples. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but they're just kind of a zoomed in visual of things that could be considered negative wrestling. The biggest thing when it comes to fingers, passivity versus negative wrestling. Interlocking hands or fingers, that's passivity. Twisting fingers is negative wrestling. So that's the biggest differentiation. But these first two graphics don't even have to do with fingers. They're two hands holding onto a wrist and like outstretched arms, right? So if you see that, there's nothing coming from that that's going to lead to points. And that's beyond the scope of passivity. That's more negative wrestling, because there's no way that the athlete who has his hand or arm locked up there is going to get to any kind of hold. So again, not going to spend too much time on that, but you can go back and look at this visual at a different time if you want to get some more reference there. Okay, as I talked about before, I'm gonna refer back to folk style, because again, that's a point of reference for most Americans. So most people, when they first are exposed to freestyle or Greco-Roman wrestling, they equate stalling to passivity. They equate it to stalling, and they are not the same. I always say they are akin, they are cousins, but they are not the same thing. And so in the rule book for the NFHS, It states that each wrestler is required to make an honest attempt to stay within the 10-foot circle, wrestle aggressively, regardless of, I can't see this part, but position or score. So, again, that means you can call stalling at any time, regardless of what the score might be. That is not the case with passivity. So the way you need to think about passivity is if there are not points on the board, somebody's passive, regardless of how active people are. If there are not points on the board, somebody must be passive, right? And we're in the middle of NCAA wrestling right now, and actually there's been lots of points, and it's been really exciting. But you can have a low-scoring match and not see stalling called at all, because you might see some really great flurries and people being active. But in a freestyle Greco-Roman match, you would see passivity called, because if you don't have points on the board, it is incumbent upon the officiating body to call passivity. And again, I'll just reiterate, I always, when I'm looking at this slide and talking about passivity and it being the absence of points, I use a John Wooden quote. It's one of my favorite quotes. Don't mistake activity for achievement, right? So you may get some great flurries and all sorts of attempts, but if at the end of it there aren't points, somebody's passive, okay? And you have to wrap your brain around that. You're going to have to call passivity if people don't score points. All right. So we're going to move into Greco-Roman passivity and activity identifiers. I'm going to switch it over to Jason Bobby, and he's going to take it from here.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Like Nick said, going to move more into specifics now, and then right now we'll just cover Greco-Roman passivity and identifiers. Like Nick said earlier, one thing about Greco is you want to see a lot of hookings, a lot of bringing the action towards you. Not many actions in Greco involve just pushing or creating distance. I really like this slide here. It shows the target area of where those hooks should be coming, underhooks, overhooks, body locks. What athlete is taking ties, 2-on-1s, and what are they doing with those actions? Are they progressing with it, or are they just holding on to it? If an athlete's in there and they're hooking, okay, they're trying to take ground, they're controlling center, the other athlete's backing away, trying to create that distance, breaking their lock and not taking a lock of their own. Those are good identifiers of what's going on with Greco and who's being passive. Here you see where you can be locking with the overhook, body locks, underhooks. You can move on to the next slide there, Nick.
Yeah, sorry, you're going to have to give me an audio each time you want me to move it. Sorry.
Hey, no worries. Identifiers for Greco: contact, who's trying to close that distance again, hooking, who's in there, who's taking their hooks, who's moving their opponent, and then who's setting up the attacks from those ties or hooks that they have. You guys look for yourselves, who's creating distance, who's actively trying to pull that person in, who's hooking. You can go ahead and play it now there, Nick. Don't worry about the call that the referee actually makes. He does make the passive call in here and then ends up calling something else. But really watch Blue's action and what Red is doing within the mat. Okay. So there you'll see Red's giving up ground. All right, Blue's trying to hook. He's moving forward. And Red tries changing direction, but ultimately just keeps backing up on the mat until he eventually steps out of bounds. Referee does a good job of indicating Red as being passive before he steps out of bounds there.
The only thing I'd add to that is, so the referee's giving the right signals and verbalizing, but if you got somebody backing up that much and they get to the zone, like hang back, you're probably going to get a step out or maybe some big action because he's going to be forced to step back in, right? So when you get to the edge like that, even though you may have set up the call perfectly. Like, just wait, because generally stuff happens at the edge when somebody's pushing real hard. So
moving into our Greco passivities, procedures, rules, how we move the bout along in Greco. For the purpose of all this Greco, when we're talking about time, we're using a 3-minute period. We will get into a future slide where it breaks down 3-minute, 2-minute periods. But for this right now, we'll just use a 3-minute period. Greco, it takes some time for holds to evolve. So you want to be patient when we're evaluating the Greco match. When we're evaluating who that active athlete is, you're going to want to wait till about halfway through the match, about a minute 40, minute 30 into that first period, before we're going to call somebody for passivity. During that time between the on the front half of that, we're going to be trying to stimulate action. If we have one athlete that's backing away, while the other one is controlling center, taking ground, looking for hooks, grabbing a tie, moving his opponent with the tie, trying to set other things up. We'll use things to stimulate action such as contact, no block, head up. Once we get into that minute 30 part, we'll go ahead, we'll ask for passivity. We'll hold our hand out on whatever color we're indicating. We'll get confirmation from the judge or the chairman. It has to be the chairman who does confirm all passivities, but we'll get our passivity, and then the active athlete will get 1 point in his choice if he's putting his opponent, leaving him on his feet, or put him into the parterre position. Once he puts him into the parterre position, you want to give him some time. You're putting him down there for a reason. Give that top man time to work. 20, 25 seconds is a good amount of time. You just don't want to put them down and then bring them right back up to their feet. Keep in mind, you can only have one passivity in the first period. Once we move into that second period, we have the possibility of 2 passivities, but for the first period, it's only 1 passivity. Judge and chairman, on your bout sheets, you'll mark your bout sheet when you put them into passivity with a P.
So I'm just going to chime in on Jason, if that's okay.
Yep.
Just going back to that total bout concept. This part I'm about to say is really nuanced. And again, it's difficult for people to wrap their brains around sometimes. I know for me, when it's first taught to me, it's hard to wrap my brain around. But if somebody scores points in Greco-Roman from their feet, chances 98% of the time, you're putting them on top first in a Greco-Roman match. They have earned the right to be on top by virtue of scoring points. So everything Jason just talked about was kind of on that 0-0 thought process. But if you do get points early on in a bout and you're going to make a passivity call, you almost always are going to give the benefit of the doubt to somebody who scored offensive points. So just going back to that total bout concept, I thought it's important to mention that.
Thank you, Nick. And that's the thing of, we want to have, unless both athletes are in there and we're working, we have points. We're going to want to pretty much have somebody going down in that first period to help keep the match moving forward in the second, but keep that total bout concept in mind of who has put points on the board in that first period. Second period, moving along, regardless if there is points in that first period, it's going to change your mindset. Looking at a 0-0 mentality going into that second period, we definitely have 1 point when we're starting this period. If the action continues the same, you want to get if he deserves it. If it still stays equal, we want to give the other man a shot on top and see if he can produce any points from the parterre position. When we do that, the time scale for that is going to be a lot shorter. We're not going to wait that whole half a period almost like we did in the first period. Second period, we're going to tighten that up and be right around the 220 to 210 mark is where we're going to want to put that other person down, just in case we're going to need a third passivity in our toolbox later on in the bout. Same scenario though, if we do put him down in that position, we're going to want to give him time to work there. and see if he's able to produce any points before we bring him back up to his feet. If we do have a score, say Red was able to score in that first period in the parterre position, and all of his points have come from that first ordered parterre position, we're definitely going to want to put the other guy on top and see if he's able to produce any points in that same position that Red was able to score in.
And again, if he's earned it, right? So there's
Correct.
a couple of pieces to that.
If he's still backing away, not showing any activity, we're not going to put him down just because he's hasn't had that opportunity. He still has to earn his place on top. Remember, being put down is kind of a penalty for not having action. So if the guy who's leading, just because he's leading, is still moving forward, is still creating contact, staying chest to chest, we're not just going to put him down just to give the other guy a chance. The other guy must earn that spot, and that's by being active himself as well.
And so there are a few scenarios that we could talk, and we could talk through a million scenarios, but some common scenarios that might happen is, say blue is active in the first period, so therefore red's passive, and blue is now winning 1-0, and blue, gets a lift for 4, and then a turn for 2, and now it's 7-0 going into the second period, right? But all of those points have come from an ordered parterre position. So that 7-0 is a heck of a lot different than I took you down and then lifted you for 4 and got a step out. Those are two totally different 7-0 scenarios, right? So if I got that ordered parterre in the first period, got a lift for 4, got a turn for 2, and we go into the second period and things are 50-50 on our feet, or maybe even 60-40, still blue being the aggressor, probably giving red a shot on top. That being said, if blue is clearly still the aggressor, this is where those nuances come in, almost these kind of unspoken rules. If blue is still clearly the aggressor, and it's that scenario I just gave, he's up 7-0, you're going to let it ride. Because what you're not going to do is make it 8-0 on a passivity call, right? You're never going to end the match on a passivity call, because 8-0 would be a tech fall, right? So little nuances to consider. But if it's 3-0, he got an ordered parterre and a gut wrench, and then he's still clearly the aggressor, by all means, you can put red back down. So a lot of different scenarios to think about. But it's when we go internationally, they do tell us hey, you don't have to go back and forth. But then if you do call the same guy, they pull you off the mat and they'll say, it must be 100% that he's clearly the aggressor, right? So just keep that in mind. You can call the same guy twice. That's no problem. Just make sure it's clear as day that there's no way to identify him as the passive wrestler, right? One of the best ones that I use as an example is the 2020 or 2021 Olympic Games at the finals at heavyweight. The Cuban, he gets the first passivity. Meaning he earns the first point. He gets on top. Kind of a basic Greco match. He can't turn the guy. Second period, he comes out knowing, if I don't totally make it 100% obvious, I'm going to lose this match. And he does. He makes it 100% obvious. He's the aggressor. He gets the second call. So that's a good example. If you ever want to see this is what it looks like, go watch that heavyweight 2021 Olympic finals. Sorry, go ahead, Jason.
Can I actually interrupt with a quick question, if that's okay?
Sure.
Where's the mentality of tying into this with Greco? All the points were scored in the first period, so this next period it's starting from fresh. Or do you know what I'm saying?
No.
All the points were scored in the first minute of the first period. Are we worried about passivity again in the second period?
It depends on how the points were scored, right? If the wrestler scores from their feet and puts a ton of points up, you're gonna back off from passivity against that wrestler. If they were scored from an ordered parterre, then no, all
that's
bets
different.
are off. Yeah.
All right, cool. Just tying those two in my head. Thanks.
Yep. And some of the justification for that has been given to me, you know, over the years, you hear these philosophies and they may not make sense, but one of the justifications that made sense to me was, well, yeah, he's obviously going to be tired. He worked his butt off to score all these points. Like we're gonna cut him a break because he did his job. We want points. He did exactly what we asked him to do. So now we're not going to penalize him when he did exactly what we asked him to do, and now he's tired, right? So that made sense to me. They worked their butt off. You back off them a little bit when they put points up.
And Nick, we'll be able to see a little bit of that later on in one of our videos when we move on to some passivity errors. There will be a very good example of somebody working, putting up a lot of points. So we'll move on from that into our third passivity, if never ever needed. And I do want to emphasize it's a tool in our toolbox if we need it. And there's always scenarios out there, like Nick was able to tell us about a few. But if both athletes are even, one guy is showing more action and we're needing maybe somebody's sitting on a lead that was both guys scored in a parterre position. Blue was the last man to be on top, was able to score, tied it up, and is now just backing away the rest of that period. We don't want to really go into our fleeing the hold necessarily. If it's not on that limit, it's right in between, but we can use a passivity to put him back down and give red that opportunity. If red continues to be attacking after that second parterre and blue, or we're using red and blue, the attacking wrestler is still, the winning wrestler is just defending, trying to hold on to that lead. We could use as a tool another passivity to give red an opportunity. Nick, do you have anything on that more to share with the passivity?
No, I think you explained it pretty clearly. I will say again, if you go back and watch that 2021 Olympic finals match, you'll see the Cuban gets the first two passivity calls. He's winning 2-0, and then they put him down, which is the right thing to do. With about 1:15 left, they put him down. Basically, hey, if you can turn this guy, you win the match. That's kind of what that third passivity call is for. Or one scenario, because Jason explained a great scenario also, right, where they both got an order parterre and they both scored, and the one guy with the lead is kind of trying to cruise or trying to hang back, then you can put him back down. What you would never do, again, it kind of falls in line with you won't end the match on a tech fall passivity. You would never call the person who is losing, you would never call them for a third passivity because they're losing. If they don't want to win, let them lose, but don't put them down and add insult to injury, right? Like if they're not willing to open up and try and be the active wrestler and try and find ways to score points, then you just hang back and let them lose, but don't put them down in parterre when they're losing in that scenario on a third passivity. Good?
We can move on to that next one, Nick.
Hey, I got a question here for you guys.
Sure.
Is actually pops in. He's asking between a 1:30, 1:20 time frame for the third passivity call if needed. What's your guys' thoughts on that?
We actually have a slide that breaks down the timing of everything, so we'll get into that more. But I will say, for me, I don't ever want there to be a lead change based on a passivity call with less than 50 seconds left, right? Like I wanted the dust to be settled and all cleared up and still as close to a minute left on the board as possible. So if you get under a minute, for sure, if you get under 50 seconds, you should not see a third passivity call. And I'm talking about 50 seconds remaining. Anytime before that, you know, all is fair game. Did that answer the question?
Does that apply both styles, you feel?
I do. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You're the man.
All right, Jay, go ahead.
Just to highlight some of the past things we just talked about. Number one, don't be in a rush to call passivity in Greco. It takes time for things to evolve, for holds to evolve and develop. So stimulate them. Don't be constantly in their ear, but you do want to be stimulating action. If one is backing up too much, tell them to contact, use your UWW vocabulary. Remember, don't be considering it until about a minute 40, minute 30, which is put you almost halfway into that first period. In a 2-minute period, we'll consider calling that passivity right around the minute mark, since you don't have that verbal warning there. Nick said it earlier, but we never want to end a period in passivity. Okay, so if we get under 30 seconds, we've lost that ability to call passivity, number one. It's no longer available to us. Whenever we do put somebody down, we want some time left on that clock, okay, for them to wrestle things out on their own. And we'll get more into that when we get into the timing piece of it as well. Once we put somebody down, give that top guy time to work and develop a potential to score. 25, 30 seconds to work a hold. And then a wrestler gains all their points from the order parterre, absolutely considering that next period, giving the other guy the opportunity to his shot on top as well. Moving on, Nick, we'll go into that Greco passivity timing. Here you see in the first period, about the minute 40 to a minute 30 is your first passivity call. And you guys can read through that. I'm sure a lot of you have seen this before. I really like this slide, this cheat sheet, and then the one for freestyle as well. It really gives you a good breakdown of where we should be at as officials and our timing and our calls.
And I always tell, anytime I'm giving a clinic, I always tell anybody who's involved, so coaches, athletes, and officials, take a picture of this. Like, this is kind of the Bible, or like my cheat sheet, right? When I'm going through that internal clock in my head, this is exactly what I'm thinking of. So if it's done correctly, these are the time frames that you'll see passivity calls made.
So there we just discussed the first period, and then going into the second period, you'll see how that time is shortened down to keep that third passivity in your toolbox if needed. Leave them down there. You're going to leave them down again, 20, 25 seconds, just like in the first period. You want that man to work there. Remember, it's still that penalty for the passive wrestler not being active. And then if needed, right at that 1:10 to 1 minute mark, your third passivity call, falling into those parameters that we previously discussed.
And again, I'll just chime in on this third passivity call. The timing that's listed here is probably a little bit different than my own personal clock. I like to have some time on the board if the lead's going to change, right? The winner is going to change based on a passivity call, right? Which in Greco, it's not based on my passivity call, but I'm putting somebody in that penalty position. And so again, when that penalty position ends and they come back to their feet, I would like there to be 40 to 45 seconds left on the clock. That's what I'm kind of shooting for. So that, okay, I'm losing. I was winning, now I'm losing. I know exactly where I stand, and there's not 10 seconds left, 15 seconds left, right? There's time to develop something.
Just one thing before we move on to the next slide. I do want to reiterate, going back to the Greco passivity, our procedures and the rules. That first period, the active wrestler is going to get a point plus choice of position, either standing or parterre. Second passivity will be a point with choice of standing or parterre. The third passivity, there's no point associated with it. So the active wrestler will just get choice of standing or being in the parterre position. Nick, we can move on down to the next slide.
Okay. All right. I'm just going to hit play.
Yes,
You ready
sir.
for that?
Here you'll see red. I'm sorry, say that again, Nick.
No, I was going to chime in, but you're on it. Go ahead.
Okay, well, if you're seeing it in good motion, go ahead and talk. I still have it choppy, but.
So, well, basically, we're looking for hooks, right? Who's maintaining contact and who's trying to get hooks? And now you just saw the official indicate red, because red is pushing with his hands and breaking contact, where blue is, you can see, trying to get an underhook. And Jason made a good point. We were talking earlier the other day. An active wrestling Greco is going to be trying to pull their opponent towards them, right? So if you see Blue's got that underhook and he's trying to pull him towards him to maintain body-to-body contact, because that's how you get points. So where one wrestler is extending arms and kind of pushing away, the other one is looking for hooks and pulling the athlete towards them. So one more time, and Jay, feel free to chime in if you can see it.
Yep.
And if you got something
No,
to add.
I can. One important thing here was Red kind of tries to simulate action sometimes by holding inside, but all he's doing is blocking Blue from being able to develop a hook or a different tie. And again, he's trying to create distance and not re-hooking.
Are you going to be looking for passivity to call passivity here versus negative, correct?
100%. Yeah, it's 0-0. So if you're gonna look at negative wrestling, right? Negative wrestling is a penalty. It's a foul, and it doesn't result in an ordered parterre. So I'm looking for passivity when it's 0-0. The only thing is where I would be looking for negative wrestling is kind of that early slide where we had them side by side. If somebody is doing something that's preventing the active wrestler from getting a hold and making body-to-body contact, right? That's negative wrestling, and we have to nip that in the bud, right? So if they're pushing with 2 hands away,
stuffing their head in kind of that neck area, shoulder area.
But for the most part, again, 0-0, I'm looking for passivity, and I would only go negative wrestling if it's very obvious, like, hey, nobody's going to be able to score anything because this guy's committing fouls, right? Again, negative wrestling is a foul.
Got it. Cool,
I have a question.
Sure.
I've seen some wrestlers internationally, like, sometimes they would interlock fingers and all this stuff. And then I seen some of the officials like kind of getting like interfering and like cutting that off. Like, are we allowed to technically do that?
Do you mean physically? Like they go in and break their fingers? Like,
yeah.
Like, no. So that used to be a thing. It used to be something we were taught to do, but that's gone away. Like, we don't touch the athletes. So you tell them to open, tell them no fingers, and firmly, and if they don't come off it, blow your whistle and give them an attention.
Oh, okay.
Hey, Nick, I would like to add one thing on the difference between negative wrestling and passivity. Before we have anything that's negative besides hands in the face or a direct foul, and I think that's key to remember, negative wrestling is a foul. But you have passivity before you can fall into negative sometimes. So if this guy is just blocking, okay, blocking can be considered to a degree of negative wrestling, but before you would take it to that extreme, you would call the man for passivity. Use their first available tools in that toolbox. You need points on the board, you need action where early in the match, you'd want to go first to a passivity there. Now, granted, I don't want to deter you of if somebody grabs fingers and twists them, turns them upside down, of we're going to call that passivity first. No, that needs to be handled as a direct caution, but think of passivities before you want to go into a negative wrestling. We're late in the match, okay, we don't want, both guys have been active, both guys have been putting points on the board. Our mind is no longer in that passivity mentality. Now we're looking at fleeing the hold, where fleeing the hold is an extreme passive mentality. If that makes sense for everyone? Nick?
No. Yeah, no, you're spot on. One, the other piece I would add is I want to get them in parterre, right? If people aren't scoring points, generally in Greco-Roman, if I get them in parterre, I'm more likely to see points. So whereas negative wrestling, yeah, I'm putting a point on the board or 2 points on the board as a foul, but I'm not getting them into parterre. So we're just going to see more of the same. So for me, I'd rather get that passivity call, get them into parterre, and hopefully that'll open the matchup at that point, right? Because we'll start getting some points on the board. That's the philosophy.
In that last scenario, when you're setting up to fleeing the hold, you're stimulating action before you get to the, maybe later bout. do you stop and give an attention before you give that fling the hold, or is that something you would just go straight to? Hey, you're
We'll
fling the
talk
hold?
about that. We have a whole set of slides on fouls and penalties, and we're going to go over fleeing the hold, fleeing the mat. So we'll talk about the timing of that. It's a great question, but let's get to that. We'll go over it then.
Perfect.
The only thing I'd say on this before we move on is, so I think I've been able to identify who the active wrestler is, right? Hopefully in watching this, you've been able to identify who the active wrestler is, right? Blue is the active wrestler. Here's the hard part. Here's the really, really hard part. What does the clock say right now? We're only 56 seconds into this bout. Even though it's clear as day to me that blue is the active wrestler, I need to hang out another 34 seconds before I actually make the call. So that's the difficult part, because it's pretty clear that red's the passive wrestler, but things take time to develop. And so again, the thought process here is, yes, blue is the active wrestler. He's getting to hooks. Let's see what he can do with those hooks. That passivity call is always there in my toolbox. I can always make that call. And I've already, 56 seconds in, seen who I'm going to call for passivity. Now I'm still going to give him time to maybe score, because that's what we want. We want the athletes to score the points on their own, not us score them for them. Okay. All right. So we talked a lot about Greco-Roman passivity, and there are similarities and then there are differences. Greco-Roman is, for me, much more nuanced and difficult to see. But what really helped me was, again, talking about hooking. If you can get to hooks in Greco-Roman, you're going to see points. And so anything that prevents hooks can be considered passivity. All right. So moving on to freestyle passivity. If an athlete is put on activity time, they must score within that 30-second activity period. Okay. And if they're unable to score, then their opponent is awarded 1 point. Regardless of if the active wrestler scores, the wrestler who was put on activity time must score within that 30-second period, or they are giving up points. We'll talk about it briefly. U15, U17, and veterans divisions, those are 1 minute periods. So in a 3 minute period, it's incumbent upon the officiating team to give a warning first. And in freestyle wrestling, that's actually something that is asked for by the referee or judge, confirmed by the mat chairman, bout stopped, and signified with one rolling hand. Hey, this is blue. This is your warning for passive wrestling. That's in a 3 minute period. So you will get a warning before you're put on the activity time. In a 2 minute period, there is no warning. So again, if you're U15, U17, or veterans, you'll set that call up and you'll be looking for very close to the minute mark. But keep in mind, the rules state that if the score is 0-0, somebody must go on the activity clock by the 1 minute mark. So you shouldn't tick down below 1 minute remaining. So you need to be setting up that call in a 2 minute period so that you can make it approximately around 50 seconds elapsed is when you would make that call. Okay. All right. All right. So freestyle activity identifiers. Who's grabbing hands and hanging onto the hands? Right. You'll see a lot of holding on to fingers, and you've got to just be really, really aggressive. No fingers. Again, we don't touch the athletes. It's one of those things. You don't want it to turn into a caution, so control it early, right? And be very aggressive on, if you see wrestlers tying up fingers, get on them right away. Who's controlling the center of the mat, and then who's actually making attacks, making attempts. So let's look here. I'm trying to think. Let me go back for a minute. This match right here, we haven't touched on it yet, and I don't know why, but Jason could tell you I'm very, very big on, it's not really even being big on it. Our rules are, if the score is 0-0, we are going to make 3 passivity calls in the first period in freestyle, right? So we talked about Greco. You only make 1 call in the first period, and you have 2 calls in the second period. That's Greco-Roman passivity. Those are the rules. 1 in the first, 2 in the second. In freestyle, it switches, okay? In freestyle, if it's 0-0, we're going to make 3 calls in the first and 2 calls in the second. Keep in mind that the first call on either wrestler is a warning, right? So at the end of the day, you would have 3 activity periods, right? If you followed that prescription of 3 calls in the first, 2 calls in the second. So remember I talked about at the beginning of this presentation, if wrestlers aren't scoring points, they are passive. Period. Doesn't matter how active they are. If they're not scoring points, it's incumbent upon the officiating team to call passivity. So this is a great sequence. I did all that to set up. Watch this sequence, and this is how it's done correctly when you have wrestlers who aren't scoring points. So it's going to take a while because we're going to watch most of the first period here. Okay, who's taking ground, right? Who's making attacks? Officials already indicated to blue, giving it some time to adjust. Indicates again. First warning. Okay, 41 seconds in, there's your first warning. Pretty good timing. Okay, so now is blue going to adjust and start becoming active? Doesn't look like it. Red's still taking ground. Again, referee signaling blue, setting it up. Pretty clear that red's being the aggressor. Blue's blocking, red's taking ground. There, it's been confirmed. Again, timing is critical. You've had your warning. Now you've made your passivity call. Now for the next 30 seconds, frankly, you're not getting involved. As an officiating team, unless there's a foul, you're not getting involved in the match, right? Blue knows he's in a penalty right now. He's got 30 seconds to make something happen. Again, that's the idea. The idea is he would open up, maybe start being aggressive, and that would lead to points. Okay, there's the 1 point on the board. No stoppage when you award the point. But what did I say? I said you're going to get 3 calls in the first. So this is where a good official has to start looking. Basically, I got to call red. Red hasn't scored any points. Yes, he's been the aggressor, but he has not scored points, and I need to get 3 calls in the first. So now I start looking for what is red doing. And when I see an opening to call red for passivity, okay, good attack. But again, it didn't lead to points. Don't mistake activity for achievement. And there you go. Okay, so that is a perfectly executed first period of freestyle calling passivity. Again, I don't think you could ever mistake red for stalling, right? If we're talking about folk style, red was not stalling there. Red was the more active wrestler. But again, it's not stalling we're talking about, it's passivity. And red has not scored any points. So we certainly gave red the benefit of the doubt by giving blue a warning, then putting blue on the clock, then awarding red a point. But at that point, we're over 2 minutes in a match, and red hasn't scored any points either. So again, it's incumbent upon you to then warn red for passivity as well. So that's one that is difficult. People have a hard time wrapping their brain around that. But that's the fact. If you do your job, and if the wrestlers aren't doing their job and they're not scoring points, then your job is to get 3 passivity calls in the first period of a 3-minute freestyle match. Okay. Questions about that? Okay. I really harp on that one because every single time it's difficult. It's hard, right? Especially when you have really high-level athletes, they're getting after it. It's hard. But every single time I've been involved in a high-level match and that didn't happen, we didn't get 3 calls in the first, it caused problems. It caused problems. So get it done, and then you can back off because you did your job, right? But you have to get 3 calls in the first. Okay, in the second period, again, things are going to happen quicker. So you got 3 calls in the first, somebody's been put on activity time. You come back in the second period, you're going to make that call 30 to 45 seconds into the period. If you made 3 calls in the first period, that means that this call that you make is for sure putting somebody on activity time. And notice I didn't say you have to go back to the other person. There's nothing wrong with calling the same person and putting them on the clock again. You can do that, but make sure that it's dictated by what the athletes are doing, right? All things being equal, you would probably even it up and give the other guy a shot on the clock. Okay.
And
But
Jeremy
that,
said, all things being equal, it's not like lopsided where this one guy's trying as hard as he was blocking. Well, you could hit him for 2 passivity call. It's
and I'll,
roughly equal. Generally, you want to give the other guy a chance.
I would
And
say
there'll be
this: if we use that video we just watched that Sammy was refereeing, if we saw a very similar second period, I would probably put red on the clock. Did I get that right? I would probably put blue on the clock again, because red was the active wrestler throughout everything, right? I got my warning in on red like I'm supposed to, but I would probably come back, put blue on the clock again, and it would be 2-0 at the end of the first 2 activity times. But then if it stayed the same way, I would put red on activity time as well. Again, we had one like this that it played out this way. It's important to put both guys on the clock at some point. I had at the last World Team Trials, I think it was Marcus Blaze and Dayton Fix, right? And it was the same kind of thing. Like Fix really controlled the center, controlled the ties, and he was up 2-0, but then he also didn't score any points, so he went on the clock at some point. And it was 2-1 with about a minute left, and then they figured it out, right? And that's kind of your job as the officiating team, is give everybody equal chance on the activity time if they're not scoring points, and then let them figure it out. Okay? Questions about any of this? Again, this is the same slide I said in Greco. Take a picture of this, memorize this. This is what we follow in terms of prescribing passivity to freestyle wrestling when the wrestlers aren't scoring points. All right. All right. Let's take a look at this one. Okay, she gives him an attention for a foul. He can't twist the wrist like that. Again, you should be evaluating who has been the more active wrestler. Okay, so the question is, who's been the more active wrestler? And I'm asking any feedback from the group here.
You can put your answers in the chat if you want.
So again, this is not like simple, right? If we'll watch again, and I'll give you my feedback. Okay, so whistle blows, and blue is immediately on an attack. Right, so that's the first thing I noticed. Blue's on the attack, but then red comes to a deep underhook, and then blue kind of pushes away, and red's right back on an underhook, trying to pull the head down. Now I got blue blocking. So blue kind of reach up, push the face away. Kind of broke contact there. That's not a real attack, right? So those are things you got to consider. Like, yeah, blue dropped to a knee, but was that a real attack? Was there any risk taken? Now I got blue blocking. Okay, again, she stops the match and gives red an attention for twisting the wrist, which is fine. But that shouldn't factor into passivity, right? That's actually him being active. And again, right back to an underhook, and blue's giving up that position, so now blue's blocking. So again, for me, red is clearly the active wrestler. But again, it wasn't like clear as day, and it's not always going to be clear as day. Again, if you look at the first 5 to 10 seconds of that match, blue's the more active wrestler, but then it changes, right? And that's why you give them some time.
just one of the big things officials do is getting involved in the match sometimes when we don't need to be. And I think this video is a good indication of that if you want to kind of pull it up, Nick. But I want everybody to look at, we're coming out of the first period, the 30-second break, and look at the score on the clock up on the board. I think it's a total of 17 points up there. And you'll see the actions going. Blue gets a score here right in the beginning of the second period for a big score from his feet. And how Nick mentioned earlier, scoring from your feet is big. And as we progress here, you see the referees talking to Blue. You know, Blue just scored big. He has an opportunity to get his wind back and sit back on that last move just a little bit. Meanwhile, Blue's still maintaining contact and keeping in there with red.
So yeah, we're a minute 15 in this period, and we've seen 6 points scored and a total of 23 points. I mean, I'm just telling you what I'm thinking. If I'm a part of this match in any position, is I'm not getting involved at all. These guys are doing everything I want them to do. Right?
This is an entertaining match.
Make sure it's fair, but other than that, get out of the way. And this position is a scoring position. Body over under position, body to body, chest to chest. Get out of their way and let them score. That's a scoring position. Now that's some blocking there, but that's okay. He stops and he talks to him. That's no problem, right? Because again, we have to make sure it's fair. But no way in hell is this passivity with 23 points on the board. And he scored 13 points, and now we're going to put him down. And so the other problem is you cannot challenge passivity. A confirmed passivity cannot be challenged. But, the coach has the right idea here. There's no way this should be passivity.
That was correct starting at that time, but not correct starting now. Just FYI.
So again, my opinion, no reason to stop that. He had a 2-on-1, was taking ground.
Correct. And looking at that passivity where he put Blue down there, Nick, I think a lot of referees feel that they not really have to even it out, but they have to give that losing wrestler the opportunity. And in this video, clearly Red is able to score on his own. So that many points on the board, sit back, let the athletes wrestle, let them determine their futures there.
And again, that's just going back. I'm always going to, because we're entrenched in that folk style mentality. Guy's got to lead. Yeah, he's not being as aggressive. In a folk style match, we might think about him as stalling, right? But again, that's not the same as passivity because he scored a ton of points. So he has earned the right to be passive. Sorry, go ahead, Jay.
So, guys, in the Q&A, I got Laura's asked, how many points in your mindset? How many points do we back off of passivity?
So every match is different, and I talked about at the very beginning of this presentation how the points were scored and when they were scored, right? So I've had a scenario where I got in my own head once because I had 6 points on the board, and I'm like, oh, there's 6 points on the board, can't call passivity anymore. But in actuality, those 6 points all happened in a flurry in the first 8 seconds of the bout, right? So that matters. Again, the idea of total bout concept, what points were scored and when they were scored matters. So I don't have an exact answer for you, Laura, because that all plays a role. But when you have cumulative points of 6, 7 points, I'm probably backing off for the most part. Again, there are exceptions to every rule. So I just gave you one where, quick headlock, reroll, 4-2, first 5 seconds of the bout. That's not the same as one guy getting a takedown and a gut wrench, another guy getting a takedown a minute later, right? Those aren't the same 6 points. So I can't give you a black and white. Jason, you got anything on that?
No, it's hard to say with the black and white of at these points, if they score 8 points, they're done. Don't look at them again. It's a feeling. Every scenario is different. Just like Nick, I've had points that have happened right at the beginning of the match, and then that guy tried to sit back the entire rest of the match, just going off of his first 30 seconds in the first period. As long as both guys are scoring, I'd let them figure it out. Again, don't get involved if you don't need to. Laura, if that first video was a perfect scenario of both guys are still getting at it. They have a lot of points thrown up on the board. You can always attention for, hey, keep the action moving, have a conversation, bring them into the center, say, hey, continue to wrestle, maybe chirp at them a little bit more with your UWW vocabulary. But other than that, if there's a lot of points and they're still continuing to engage, let them be.
When, again, you got to look at the positioning as well, right? Those guys were over, under, body to body. Like, those are scoring positions. Like, there was nothing, even if there weren't points on the board, I probably wouldn't call passivity there because they're going to score in those positions. So you've got to consider that as well. Certainly, like double-digit points, I'm not calling passivity anymore. Like, I think that's a pretty fair cutoff. But in that 6 to 9 point range, it could depend, right? There was some in the chat about, is 6 points in Greco more than 6 points in freestyle? Again, it depends on how they were scored. If they were scored from an ordered parterre, no, not at all, right? If they were scored from the feet, yeah, probably, right? A 4-2 match in freestyle, a passivity call is still totally in play for me, right? But depends on how the points are scored and when. And if they were all spaced out and we have pretty consistent scoring, probably not. So again, you've got to feel those things out. All right. Hopefully we get audio on this one. I'll try and.
Yeah, and this is just a real quick one of, I just want to emphasize, whenever we get a confirmed passivity, look back at the action and hold your whistle.
Hear it one more time. My worst nightmare.
So there we have a really good action, but an inadvertent whistle. He has a confirmed passivity, holds up his hand, but instead of waiting, looking back at the action, he turns, blows his whistle, and stops a throw and somebody landing on their back, potentially a pin, from continuing. Once that whistle blows, we have to stop the action and bring them up.
And here's the thing. I can tell you, I've been guilty of this in high-level matches at least 2 times. Like, I know because they're like on the internet. But luckily nobody ended up on their back in those scenarios. Like, this is my worst nightmare. You blow your whistle and somebody's in danger, right? So sometimes you got to learn the hard way. Hopefully you listen to me and Jason and you don't have to learn the hard way, but just make sure when you get confirmation, you're on the whistle, you get confirmation, you look back at the athletes and take a breath. Like, hey, is anything actually happening right now? No? Okay. Right? Like, that call's not going away. And if they're somehow in a situation where they could score points, I can't reiterate enough. That's what you want. That's what you want. You want them to score points. Like, you don't want to get involved. So look back at them. You got your confirmed call. It's not going away. Take a breath. Okay, nothing's happening. Blow your whistle. Okay? Don't take a deep breath and then blow out through your whistle. That'll get you in trouble. All right. Jason, you good on that one?
Yep, I'm good. Thank you, Nick.
All right. Negative wrestling. Is this me or you, Jason?
That's all you.
Okay. There's three approaches. There is, I can stop the match and give an attention. We already saw a few examples of that. There are other situations where I give a caution to one. Certainly, if I've given an attention and then somebody's guilty of the same thing, it should be a caution and points awarded to the opponent, because that's a second time on a foul. They've already received a warning. And then the third option is brutality, which would be disqualification, okay? Or direct caution, something that is so egregious, maybe it doesn't warrant being thrown out of the tournament, but it does warrant a direct caution. So we'll see some different examples of those. I will just tell you, though, I had a situation at the Olympic trials once, and I won't tell you who the athlete or the referee was, but I will tell you the situation. It was what some people call a football grip, right? So I snapped the head down and grabbed the chin, and now I don't know if you can see my hands, but I essentially have the head with two hands and no arm encircled. And I've been asked a million times, is that illegal? And I've asked some of my friends who are some of the best referees in the world, is that illegal? Well, technically it is. There's a head with no arm encircled. But I can tell you, if they do it quick enough, I'm not going to stop the match and warn them or give a penalty for it either, right? It's when they kind of hang out there. And so if they hang out there and they're stuck there, I usually will blow a whistle. Hey, you can't do that anymore. Give them attention. As with the Olympic trials, and the referee, who's a very good referee, better than me, blew a whistle, gave an attention. I thought, yeah, okay, gave him attention. Just, hey, don't do it again. Well, the guy came right back and did it again. And he blew his whistle and threw up a caution in two. And I was the match chairman, and I'm like, no easy cautions. But I went with it. And after the match, I asked the referee, like, I've never seen that called actually like resulted in a caution and points. Like, we usually just, hey, don't do that again, right? He's like, I warned him, and he immediately did it again. Like, if I don't penalize him, I got no credibility. I'm like, okay, that works. So I just tell that story for, if you give them attention for something, the athletes know you're warning them. If you don't penalize them, they're going to keep doing it the whole match. So that's my kind of soapbox about if you give an attention and they continue to do the same thing, you have to penalize them. All right, let's look at some videos. Okay, attention, very firm attention. Stay off the fingers. Don't do it again. Next time, it's a caution. UWW talk. So, anybody tell me the error he makes? He wanted a caution of one for fingers. Does anybody know what the error is? It's not the wrong call. It's the right call.
Where was the setup for the attention? I might have missed it.
So yeah, he did give an attention. The biggest mistake he makes is you don't want to follow wrestlers around the mat holding up caution of one. If you are the referee and you see a foul from the feet, and there's no imminent scoring, blow your whistle and indicate the foul. Stop the clock. Stop the clock, stop the action, stop everything, right? Now, if there's imminent action, then that's more nuanced. But right here, there's nothing happening. He holds out blue, and he's essentially chasing the wrestlers around, holding up a caution of one. That's no bueno. Don't do that. Just blow your whistle, caution one, right? If they're in parterre, that's different. But on their feet, if there's no imminent scoring, blow your whistle, get the clock stopped, and then indicate caution of one. That's Because again, now he wants to award caution one. The match is already over. In fact, she got a takedown off. So,
Yep, go ahead, play this first one. We see this a lot in folk style, but peeling the hands and breaking the lock that way as you're coming up is a foul straight away. And the referee does a good job here. He points at it, he holds, he lets the action continue, see how it ends, but ends up giving the caution in one for the fingers instead of the step out point there coming up.
Yeah, the interesting thing is Red actually steps out, but the foul has already occurred before Red steps out here.
And that's by Blue trying to peel those hands away, much like we see in folk style as they're coming up and out.
There we go.
On the next.
Sorry.
Here after Blue gets a takedown, Red grabs the fingers, and you can see her on the bending on them. Anytime we have bending of the fingers, we want to go direct caution right away, stop that action. Now, I see a lot of referees as they're first starting out and they're coming up. Anytime those hands are touching, okay, they're stopping the whistle and getting on that athlete. There's a lot you can do just by communicating. If they're interlocking those fingers, you can just tell them without stopping the match, stay off of the fingers, okay? You can do a lot verbally instead of stopping that match every time. If you're going to stop the match, you better be giving it attention unless it's something that deserves a direct caution, such as bending fingers, the opposite direction, and that can go for on an attack also.
And I'll just chime in on this particular one. I just got through saying if they're in parterre, point to it, wait for confirmation, unless there's a safety issue, right? If they're peeling the fingers back against the joint, you're okay stopping it. I had one at the Olympic trials where this happened. Like, if somebody's going to get hurt, you could stop the match and then indicate, hey, that's a foul, right? So that one's kind of in between the two, but I think he's okay stopping the match there. All right. Is this me or you, Jay?
Yep, this on this next slide here. Both covering hands to the face. All right, this one, again, referee does a good job, attentions the wrestler. Remember, we don't want anything dropping below the brow, the eyebrows. Got to keep them above the eyebrows. Referee comes in, tells him to keep it out of his face, but he'll come right back, does it again, comes right back, does it again, and the referee is on top of it, caution one. And that's just like Nick was saying earlier of, well, if you don't give him the caution, you got no bite to your bark. So that's where we'd come back with an attention first. He continues the behavior, caution in one. This next slide, he's under attack. Okay, 2 hands to the face will result in a direct caution in one.
Again, no need for an attention there. 2 hands to the face, outstretched arms is a caution. Another one, like if I'm in a 2-on-1 and they put 1 hand to the face, that could be an attention. But if they're under attack, it could be a direct caution, right? So that's where you have to use judgment.
Absolutely. And that's one thing people are like, oh, it wasn't 2 hands. Anytime I'm under attack and I'm blocking you in the face to prevent that attack would be a direct caution. Also, if I'm ever on my back in the danger position and I'm putting hands to the face, no matter if we get a foul or if we get the fall there, fine. If he's able to come off of his back, we'll immediately award the caution and points for negative wrestling and put that person back into parterre.
And it would be caution in 2 because they're coming out of danger.
Yes, caution in 2.
So this one, it takes a while, so I don't want to show the whole thing, but the bottom line is that this girl continually blocks, and the wrestler or the referee doesn't really do a good job of stopping it. But right there, that should have probably been stopped for an attention. Blue's still coming forward. For sure, right there, should have been stopped. Just, again, an attention. He's going to take home your title. Just giving you some examples. Again, that's not a direct caution, but certainly should have been stopped for an attention. So this is negative wrestling, but again, not a direct caution. So if you watch, what Red's doing is blocking with 2 hands on the biceps, and it's nothing can advance from there. So the referee does a good job of stopping the match, giving it attention. It says red attention, next time caution. And again, you look at the score, it's 6-5. You got 11 points on the board. That's you're not going to call passivity for that, right? So if he continues to do that, blue can't take hold. So that would be an attention. And if he continues to do it, you would give a caution. All right. Grabbing the singlet. Grabbing the singlet offensively is not a penalty. Grabbing the singlet defensively is a penalty. I will tell you this. If you're not sure, it's a penalty. And I say that because if you watch this first one, I'm not sure. It could be construed as an offensive foul, but they're kind of both mixing it up. So if it's tied, it's a foul. Right there, he gets a hold of it, but now Red's re-attacking. Again, kind of a 50-50 situation. I'm not going to watch the whole thing. Bottom line is they come back with a foul. Whereas this one, there he's grabbing it, pulls. So his penalty there is he's not going to get any points, and it's an attention. Don't grab the singlet again, okay? So those are the differences, right? If it's 50-50, it's a penalty. If it's clear, like offensive foul, he didn't stop the opponent from any kind of potential score, then it's an attention. Next time it's a caution once you give the attention for that. All right. Did I miss any? Okay, women's wrestling, pulling the hair. It's a thing, and you have to watch for it. And in this match, I will tell you, it cost the wrestler the match, not making the call. The referee misses it. Eventually, the match chairman gets involved and tells the referee, hey, you have to warn her for that, but by then it's too late. It's a 3-2 match. She's probably grabbing it there. Can't tell for sure. She's for sure grabbing it there. And while under attack. That thing is, if you call it correctly, that's a caution of 1 and flips the winner. But that's the right call. And it should have been called. So Matt Chairman tells her, hey, you got to warn her. But the truth is it should have already been a penalty because it happened while she was under attack. So this is an example of how not following correct protocol and being aware of timing and total bout can really screw things up. So she kind of gets an earful from the match chairman, but they can't come back and give a penalty now because she didn't stop it when it happened. And so now what does Red have to do? Red has to like really open up, and she gets thrown to her back and loses, right? So had it been called correctly, Red would have won this match 3-3. Okay. All right, we watched this one already, but it's a good one, so we'll watch it again. And I have some buddies, some coaches who coach folk style wrestling, and they're like, Nick, I love watching freestyle wrestling. I love it. But why do you guys stop the match so much? And I tell them, here in America, we love, the banging and the heavy clubbing. But when you go overseas, when that happens, the next thing that happens is a fist fight, right? Like pretty much immediately. So as soon as somebody gives a heavy club or an outstretched arm, I blow the whistle immediately and I read them the riot act. Like, hey, that's enough of that. We're not going to do it again. Because if you don't, again, in senior level wrestling or international wrestling, like they will start boxing, right? So that's why I tell coaches is I'm just going to nip it in the bud. And that's what happened there. He reaches with an outstretched arm. If he had just blown the whistle, given it attention, that wouldn't happen. So, but in any case, that's a direct caution. Okay, we did these. Okay. These are a couple of different examples of brutality. When I say brutality, it can either lead to a direct caution, right? There, right? Against the joint, on purpose, direct caution, not brutality and ejection. Whereas this one, that's a direct, not caution, that's a direct red card. Against the joint, on purpose, to cause injury. Okay. All right. I'm going to skip over some of these because we are over time for sure. And I do want to talk about, Rick, am I okay? 5 minutes on fleeing the mat?
Do you think, man?
Okay. So I'm going to try and go quick. But fleeing the mat is certainly a nuanced thing. I will just say, if the athlete turns and faces out of bounds and leaves the mat facing out of bounds, 9 out of 10 times that's a flee. I say 9 out of 10 because I used to say like almost 100% of the time. And again, there's exceptions to every rule. And I had one at the World Championships where like this guy was Greco and it was an arm drag right at the edge. And so he had turned, faced out of bounds, but it was like all in one action. And then he took one step. So that's not a flee, right? But if the athlete turns, faces out of bounds, and on their own accord goes out of bounds, that's fleeing the mat. Okay. The big thing that we're dealing with right now that athletes are doing is getting into the grounded position, right? If I get into parterre, and athletes know this, if I'm considered grounded before I go out of bounds, then I'm not going to give up points. So as an officiating team, you have to consider that that's part of their tactics. And at what point does that become fleeing the mat? Because if they consistently drop to their knees and then go out, at some point that's fleeing the mat. Okay, so you have to consider that. A red under attack. See how blue heads out of bounds? 2 red. And then the referee doesn't signal it, but that's 2 red, caution blue, 1 red. And then the biggest thing I'll harp on in all of these is wherever the foul occurs or finishes, that's where you return. So red earns a takedown here, so they finish in parterre. So it's 2 red, caution blue, 1 red, return to parterre. I'm going to talk about that a lot. It gets screwed up a lot. And if you're a coach on this call, it's important for you to know this and to hold the officiating team accountable and make sure you get the position you've earned. Okay. We did that one. There's another one. Okay, blue on the attack. A red making his way to the edge. Okay. 2. Caution red. Let me get out of this. No takedown yet, but red starts making his way to the edge. Clear flee. And he finishes takedown. So 2 blue, caution red, 1 blue, return to parterre because they finished with the takedown. If you don't, this is the part that gets messed up a lot. If red never touches a knee, he goes out in a very similar situation, but never touches a knee, never touches an elbow, never touches a head, you don't have a takedown. So you would score that 1 blue, caution red, 1 blue, return standing because you didn't have a takedown, so you didn't establish parterre wrestling. So again, the two situations can look extremely similar. But if you don't score a takedown, you can't return to parterre if you give a step out. Yeah, I'm going to talk you through this one. We don't have an example of it, but it's an important one to understand, so try and follow my logic here. If you get into a situation where they're grounded, maybe in a front headlock position or something, and you decide red kind of goes out under attack and you think it's worthy of a step out. Like you're like, He didn't establish the parterre position. Yeah, he dropped to his knees, but he went out on purpose. It's 1 red for step out, and then it's caution blue, 1 more red. You cannot return to parterre in that situation because you gave 1 for a step out. If you give 1 for a step out, you're saying that they're standing. Okay? So if you give 1 for a step out, caution blue, 1 red for a flea, you have to come back standing. Now, if you thought they were grounded, you thought parterre wrestling was established, then you can give caution blue, 1 red, return to parterre. But you can't give 1 for a step out. So again, it's very nuanced. But again, if you give 1 for a step out, it's because you're saying they were still standing, right? So you can't return to parterre. So hopefully you follow the logic on that. We can talk about it a little bit more after I get through a few of these. Okay. Okay, he walks right out of bounds. That would be 1 blue, caution red, 1 blue, return standing. That one's an easy one. And keep in mind, if you don't see the right mechanics, that's because these calls were made before maybe the rules changed. But it's a good example. Quad pod. Okay, blue purposely puts his foot out of bounds, right? He like takes a huge step out. And now he's running out of bounds. 1 red, caution blue, 1 red, return, standing, right? There was no parterre established. There was no takedown, and you gave 1 for a step out, got to return standing. Okay. Fling the mat in parterre. This one's pretty clear. Again, they try and be sneaky, but like he started in the middle of the mat, blue's not really even driving, and they go straight out of bounds. Like red made all of that happen. That's caution red, 1 blue, return parterre. Again, they started in parterre, return parterre. All right. 1 more. This is just to show if you have a foul, a defensive foul that occurs in danger, it's caution and 2 and return to parterre, right? So that's fleeing the mat in danger. So whether it's freestyle or Greco, if you flee the mat or commit any foul in danger, it's caution and 2, return to parterre. All right. Any questions about the nuances on the step out versus the grounding? Again, that's, if I was making a point of emphasis right now in freestyle wrestling, it would be just that you've got to make a judgment call on, are they purposely grounding themselves? Are they leaving under attack? Those kinds of things. All right. Go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, just to clarify, we did have a question in the chat regarding leaving your feet on a cutback cradle. NFHS rules does state that that is illegal. However, USAW, WW, if the action goes against the joint, like Nick was referring to, and that's what we're looking for. Does the action go against the joint? Otherwise, we're good.
Right. Yeah, leaving your feet, just by virtue of leaving your feet, is not illegal, but going against the joint is. Anything else?
You got one more question in the chat. I'm just going to read it out loud here. When there are multiple instances of negative wrestling, and we are setting each separate instance with an attention prior to a caution.
I get what they're saying. It's a good question. It's a valid question, right? If some people would tell you, if I give an attention for negative wrestling, that covers all negative wrestling. And so next time I must give a caution. And I can tell you that's 100% not true, right? So if I give an attention for the 2 hands to the head, football grip, and then later they go and twist fingers, I'm not coming up with a caution. I'm going to talk to them about fingers. So now, if they are just repeatedly guilty of negative wrestling over and over and over, and they choose 10 different tools to do it, at some point I'm going to give them a caution, right? But no, it's one of those, if I warned you for it and you do it again, it's a caution. But if you do something else, and again, it's not under attack, probably not coming right back with a caution.
A question for you, Nick. on earlier on we talked about bout sheet things. One of the things that I haven't seen as I've been going through my training process, learning process, is like standardized bout sheet. Do you put an A for attentions? What is there a resource for bout sheets? How important are the bout sheets? And what are some kind of markings to keep track of those attentions? You know, if you're saying, hey, I'm giving attention for fingers, or I'm giving an attention for blocking, how does that work with the bout sheet?
That's a good question. And the truth is, there are standardized ways to write your bout sheet, but specifically when it comes to attentions, there is not. I was always taught, and Rick and Jason, Josh, if you guys want to chime in, I was always taught if I give an attention for something, I put a little dot on my bout sheet just to remind myself, like, hey, we gave an attention there. If it was for something very specific, like headbutt or something, I'll make a little note to myself that nobody else would understand, but I know what it means, right? Like, hey, that's a headbutt, just for my own purposes, but there's no formal standardized way for an attention. You guys got anything on that, Jason, Josh?
Yeah, no,
there's
pretty similar to what I do.
Yeah, they're the same. I make mark, just noting it, and then yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah, hey, Nick or Jason or someone for freestyle wrestling, and I don't know, I kind of jumped on a little bit late. Could you guys just go over the bow and arrow position? I remember last year at Women's Nationals, or Fargo, I don't remember specifically. It might have even been Northwest Regionals.
It was Women's Nationals, because I was the clinician and I said it to everybody, hey, we're going to call this illegal.
Yeah,
And
saw it more, I saw the action,
so there's one that's on like Flow from Women's Nationals a week ago, where it says like tough on top, and this girl tech falls a girl with like the John Smith Olympic roll, and I can tell you it was illegal. It should have been stopped. And there's a couple. I was sent a couple of videos, and it was from Women's Nationals, and it's going to be, as we move forward into other clinics, a point of emphasis of, hey, this needs to be stopped. Because again, I said it at Women's Nationals last year, if you make a world team using this move, you're going to get to worlds and you're going to be at a disadvantage because it's going to be stopped, right? So we need to do a better job of getting the word out at our national tournaments.
Okay, so if they're going for it, if you see it building up, are you
as soon as they turn around, like, so there's two different situations. As soon as they turn around and face the ankle and pull that ankle up and they turn back towards the head, it's the one where they're like sitting on the leg, I'm going to stop that as soon as they go that direction. Now, there's another one that happened where they didn't turn around all the way. They reached back, grabbed the heel, put it on their hip, and then started. And that one, I wouldn't stop as quickly because it kind of looked like they were going to the side. But then as you look closer, it's going against the knee. So you kind of got two situations, one against the spine, one against the knee. And in either of those, like, I'm going to be telling referees, hey, you got to stop that. And both instances that were sent to me should have been stopped.
Got it. Okay. Thanks for that clarification.
Yep. Again, though, as coaches, like, that doesn't mean it's always going to happen. But if you're a referee on here, I'm telling you, you need to stop those. You need to err on the side of caution. Anybody else? Oh, Jeff, and somebody asked this earlier, timing on fleeing the hold under 30 seconds. So anytime, I'm going to take it a step further, anytime under 15 seconds, over 15, you should always give an attention, always. Under 15, it gets a little more nuanced. Under 15 seconds remaining in the bout, you have the right to call fleeing the hold without giving an attention. It's within the rules to do that. Should you? Well, that's where it gets more nuanced. You've got to consider total bout. If it's like 14 seconds, 13 seconds, I'm probably stopping the match and giving an attention and not going directly to a caution. Under 10, I'm probably going directly to a caution. But again, the rules allow under 15 seconds, you can go to a direct caution for fleeing the hold. So But again, I would say like if you're in that 10 to 15 second range, they've probably been fleeing for 4 to 8 seconds prior to that. So you should be able to get your whistle blown, stop, say, hey, don't run away anymore. Attention, right? Don't flee. And you should still be able to do that with 13, 14 seconds on the clock, right? Because it's not something you do within a second. It's got to like be happening for a little bit, right? So I wouldn't give a direct caution unless there's under 10 seconds on the clock. Jason, anything on that?
No, I agree with you. If you're going to be calling a flee under that 15, he was probably fleeing prior to that 15 mark. And just because you hit that 15 does not lock you in of I have to go absolutely caution one. It's just another tool in your toolbox that you can utilize. If it's egregious, absolutely throw it out there, but try to verbally get him back into contact without having to do that. But it's just a tool in the toolbox, and under 15 seconds, the ability to call just straight to a caution one without the attention is allowed.
And all three still have to confirm that?
If it changes the winner, okay, internationally, so the UWW rulebook states that if it flips the winner, all three officials must agree. I can tell you if I have a judge white paddle me on that, I'm going to call a conference. If I think it's fleeing, I'm going to call a conference and say, hey, you meant to hold up fleeing, right? So nationally, there's actually a USA adaptation for any world team trials that says the judge doesn't have to confirm it as long as the match chairman does.